What's up, Glenn and Infants on Thrones panel? This is Tom. I just wanted to give some thoughts on Under Banner of Heaven TV series, episode 4, which was titled Church and State. I actually enjoyed this episode quite a bit. I did have some issues, but what I particularly liked was...
The thing I hear most when I hear Mormons referenced in any kind of podcast, just in general, is just how kind and nice and, amicable they are. And that's true. And it's a really wonderful quality overall, too. But there's that potential for the passive aggressive.
Oh, yeah.
and that it can be so cruel, wrapped up in the nicest bow.
So your second choice then is, do you really take the power into yourself and no longer let the church have any power over you? Because if you do that, you also forfeit any power you might have had onto the church.
I don't know. I mean, I think we're thinking about power in different ways, because to me, the power can't be forfeited, and it never was the church's.
They matter a lot to a
lot of people.
Yeah.
And that's the choice that is being made by the people to say, just like it was a choice of me to walk away and go, you know what, I'm not going to give you guys the power here. Like, where does the power really exist then? Does the power exist in them, in this institution that's taken on a life of its own? Or for me that says, no, I'm going to ignore that. This is Infants on Thrones.
Baby steps.
You want someone to preach to you.
The philosophies of men.
I like magical toys.
You want religion, do you?
Mingled with humor.
I don't believe in them.
There will be many willing to preach to you the philosophies of men mingled with humor.
We are evolving.
Baby steps.
You can buy anything in this world of money.
Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone.
We are recording. All right.
Hey.
So Wren and Jess, how are you doing tonight?
I'm feeling good. It's kind of a bummer day because I'm going in for electrolysis on my lip this weekend, and so I've had to grow out my upper lip hairs, which is always frustrating.
What? Tell me what is the electrolysis on the lip?
So electrolysis is a permanent hair removal.
Yeah, hair removal. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they stick a needle in your hair follicle and then zap it. Electricity.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That sounds really fun. How many times do you have to do it?
A lot. I've been doing it for 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
How frequently do you have to do it in between?
So
Like, how long does it take?
I go for 1 hour sessions once a week, every week. Sometimes of course I miss or I have something I've come up, but and so in the time that like I said, I've been doing it for about 2 years. I've probably had 40 sessions or more.
Whoa.
And I think I've permanently removed probably maybe half of the facial hair that I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have to do it the same amount of time moving forward?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be another 40 sessions.
Wow.
Wow.
That is
You're brave.
commitment.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Way to go, Wren. All right, so we are here to discuss.
What about Jess? How's Jess doing?
Oh yeah, that's right, Jess. How's your electrolysis going, Jess?
It's going great.
Yeah.
I'm all done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I graduated. No. Thursdays are awesome for me because it's like the weekend. My husband doesn't work on Fridays. So yeah, we get the party started earlier.
That's
Thursday.
cool. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
very
All
nice.
right. Cool. Well, we have got a special guest tonight, sort of. So Tom Perry of original Infants on Thrones wanted to join us last week. Wasn't able to, had the flat tire or something, some excuse he made up, I think.
Super lame.
And then tonight, an even lamer excuse, his daughter has a softball game that he has to attend. I mean, come on, priorities, right?
Not that important.
But he did record some thoughts on episode 4 of Under the Banner of Heaven, and I know that each of you and I as well have some thoughts. So let's start with Tom. I'm gonna play. I think there's 4 clips that I divided them into. We can kind of respond a little bit to what Tom says, and then launch into our own stuff. How does that sound?
Fantastic.
All right.
What's up, Glenn and Infants on Thrones panel? This is Tom. I just wanted to give some thoughts on Under Banner of Heaven TV series, but more exclusively episode 4, which was titled Church and State, because I just watched it last night, and I wanted to join you guys on the panel today, but I had forgotten about my daughter's softball game. But I wanted to give some thoughts on it, because I actually enjoyed this episode quite a bit. I did have some issues, but what I particularly liked was, I like how there's a lot, it felt like there was a lot more backstory to the Laffertys, especially Dan, and some with Ron, of sort of alluding to their potential motive. But I would have liked more of the conflict of are we really going to think about polygamy again? Are we really going to think about because that to me is such a very deep thing. If you're a Mormon and then you're going to break away from mainstream, you're going to go more fundamentalist. That's a big shift, and I feel like that I would like to explore that more. I'd like to, because it doesn't happen overnight, and in the TV show it doesn't really explore it the way I would prefer, because it's such a big deal. Because I mean, in a way, I guess it's someone who goes from a law-abiding citizen to then committing criminal acts, like Dan does, where he runs away from the cops and whatever.
All right, that's Tom's first comment. So he's happy to see more backstory with the Laffertys, kind of exploring and foreshadowing their motive, and also wishes that they had spent a little bit more time exploring the shift from not being polygamous to becoming polygamous. What do you guys think about that?
He's right. Polygamy is a big deal.
Yeah.
It's not overnight. It doesn't seem like it would be, but I have a feeling we'll see more. And I haven't watched any of the new episode, but I have a feeling that this was just kind of the beginning of getting the ball rolling, getting into polygamy.
Yeah. I have watched episode 5. I watched it today. Yeah. And there is more, but not kind of what Tom's asking for, of
backstory stuff.
Yeah. What I heard Tom say was that I'd like to see the human struggle of kind of weighing the pros and cons, and is this really what we should be doing? Is this not, not just kind of all of a sudden we're in. Yeah, we're in. Kind of.
The struggle with the Lafferty men, though, it seems, especially with that whole contradiction of going against the law, government stuff, it seems like they prioritize the higher law, or, whatever religious, ideal they hold that takes precedent. And then they're always competing. They're always trying to get in there for power. And I don't know. Yeah. It seems like that's kind of a recipe for them looking for a better way or more power. I don't know.
Yeah, it definitely was a very rapid onset of becoming a law unto themselves, right?
Yeah.
The very first episode, Alan in his first little interrogations with Andrew Garfield with Jeb, he was like, well, about a year ago, this stuff started happening. And so I guess the time frame we're looking at is a year, right? And it's really hard for me to see Dan especially go from the first little dinner picnic together with the Laffertys. It seemed like Dan was just a Ned Flandersy Mormon guy, right? And to see him all of a sudden like smoking and like entertaining like cheating on his wife and entertaining like polygamy in such a quick amount of time was kind of like I don't know, that like I kind of agree with Tom, like I wish I would have seen more.
Well, you saw the
I
hotel
don't know.
scene where he's getting all amped up, right? And then he grew a mustache, and that's a slippery slope. So.
True.
Yeah.
You know what he could have used? He could have used some electrolysis.
Yeah,
There you
that's
go.
how you get to the 12, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm a little over this show at this point.
Are you? You already watched the other episode, though.
I know. Yeah. So, yeah, but it's the way that they portray the Laffertys and kind of all of the Mormons really is such a caricature. Like I don't feel like I'm watching real people making real decisions, struggling with real challenges. I feel like I'm watching a comic book with these really, really exaggerated, like accentuating how nuts and crazy they are. And it's just like, and there's this kind of crazy that's the Lafferty kind of crazy, and then there's just kind of like the regular Mormon kind of crazy, but it's all like over I don't know, it just feels kind of like heavy-handed to me and
That's
over the
interesting.
top. Yeah,
Kind of like flipped. Like
yeah,
I did know
you were really into it.
Oh yeah. First episode, I'm like, yeah, I love this. And then as you know, yeah, I'm
that's
tiring of it.
That's how I felt in the beginning, and I've just kind of committed to it being that.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, this is what it's going to be. They're going to be kind of outlandish, and yeah, I don't know. It just is what it is. But the thing I've been most curious about through this whole, I mean, up until season or episode 4 now, is just the way that it's being received. And I've noticed a couple articles lately from like Mormon scholar type people or, whatnot, really putting an emphasis on how wrong all of it is.
Oh, yeah.
So that, I don't know. I think that's interesting, but.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of that stuff. What are they saying?
Either.
There was something today, I think a Slate article or something that was just highlighting, or really it's kind of in the style of the past of where so I know Lindsay Hansen Park has worked on this a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what her role has been, but she's produced a lot of it and been, a major influence.
She's got a credit. Yeah, she has a lot of credits. Yeah.
I don't know if she wrote, but anyway, they use her character and kind of straw man, like she's not a scholar. She's not a,
they're
so
taking shots at Lindsay?
At everyone. So it's just anything they can do to kind of undercut and make it so it's not very credible. But I think it's missing the point, those articles too, that are picking it apart, because overall it has kind of a message to it that I still think is coming through. So
what message?
Just the potential danger of, giving people too much power or having certain doctrines in place that could be taken way too far. And, I don't know, to me, it seems like trauma is a big aspect of all of this too, and how it shows up over time, like cultural. If you do the flashbacks and you see these traumatic scenes in Mormon history play out, and how it's born out of that, what we have now, like we are, so much of Mormonism is descended from, those early events, and that carries through, whether it's, brazen, you see it, right out front, or if it's more like passive or seeps into stuff. But yeah.
All right. Well, let's jump into the next comment of Tom. We got a couple more of him,
we're
and
ready.
then we're gonna like really dig in.
Yeah,
then we're gonna really dig in after we get Tom out of the way.
Okay. Two problems that I have, and I don't know if this is just subjective, so hear me out. The scene where the stake president comes into the detective office and confronts Jeb, that felt unrealistic to me. I don't know. I don't know. It's possible, in the 80s, that stake presidents would exude that much, I don't know, authority or gravitas, I guess, and essentially like put a detective in his place in public. That's what was really strange to me, is that Jeb was like, hey, can we go into my office and talk about this privately? And the stake president says no. And so that was an intentional thing that the stake president was doing there, by essentially shoving in his face or telling, or kind of letting him know, giving him like an ultimatums or a threat. It was very off-putting, especially. I'm conflicted about a couple things, because I personally have had in my own experiences where you trust and you hope that confidences are held when you're talking to a bishop or a stake president, and then that goes up the ladder. So like if I'm talking to my bishop in a meeting or an interview and I tell him some things, and then I meet up with the stake president and come to find out all bets are off. Like there was no confidences held whatsoever, and I felt betrayed. I really liked the way that was reflected when the stake president was confronting Jeb, saying, I talked to Bishop so-and-so, and he told me about you're asking some very unsavory questions and blah, blah, blah. I did like that, but I just don't, I felt a little off-put that the stake president would confront him like that and sort of like put him in his place. It's like, and maybe that was sort of the intention, right? Church and state. So it feels, and that's the other thing too, is I feel like the church has way less influence, like overall, over government and law enforcement stuff now than it did, 20, 30 years ago, or even 40 years ago. So I don't know. It's hard for me to remember in the 80s, because I was a kid, of what that was like. If the church really did hold that much sway. So it's interesting, though.
All right.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. There was a lot of deference to that stake president, and even like the bishop, like, but even especially that stake president scene was like, come on. If you see your stake president, like especially in Utah, there's like 10 stake presidents for every gas station.
10 stake presidents for every gas station. I love it.
I don't know.
How else do you get across kind of that, the largeness of that kind of calling, though? You're not, the show only has so much time. You're not sitting in sacrament meetings, seeing them on the stand, or, all the comings and goings and meetings and stuff that they do. Like there is, as a member, who's the important, who are important. So yeah, I think delivery was off. That would never happen, I don't think, in a public place, but I think it would have been masked in more nice language with, slipping in some threats or reminders of your covenants. Like I could totally see that.
Yeah. And I agree with you that kind of the spirit of what they're trying to get across, like they're not making it up, but the applicant or the presentation, the way that they're showing it in the show, it's so exaggerated and so over the top to make the point that this really exists in this culture, that it almost, for me at least, kind of undermines it.
Okay. For members, for people that are, I don't think outsiders would think the same thing or be, put off in the same way. I think it's more of we know how it's done. That's not quite how it's done. Kind of thing.
What do you mean that a non-Mormon looking at this?
Yeah. Someone just watching, they'd be like, oh, this is an important person that has influence. I think that would be the takeaway. Yeah. More so than.
But doesn't it bother you that then somebody who's not Mormon would think, wow, stake presidents really walk into police stations and wield that kind of power? Because then like you come away with it with this kind of false sense of the way that power is actually used, because the way that this show portrayed it, I don't feel like that is accurate, even though I think most Mormons would look at their stake president. I don't even know if that's true. Yeah, I don't even know. I have no idea.
Wait, so
I don't know.
you're saying, so this is kind of a double imagination thing here. So imagine
Uh-huh.
a
Right.
non, you're saying a non-member is watching this show and
Yeah.
they get the impression that stake presidents in the Mormon church sure can influence like laws and investigations. Wow, that's kind of creepy. And you're upset because that's, or I mean, I want to, what more are you, what are your feelings on that, Glenn? Like, you're embarrassed by that, or like you don't think
Yeah,
it's real?
yeah. I feel like it's unfair and unflattering. It's a caricature. It's a caricature and an exaggeration of a very real sentiment that exists.
Right.
And again, I mean, this is just my take on it. And the reason I stopped talking before, I'm like, like, who am I to try to step into somebody else's mind and say how they feel about it or not? Like,
Mhm.
I kind of hesitate doing that. Um,
But I
but yeah,
guess,
the issue I have with it is that I feel like it's saying this is how things really are, and it sets the expectations of people that aren't really aligned with how things actually are.
Okay.
yeah,
To me, I think it almost just is like the whole show. It's showing you what could happen or what might, like, this isn't like, this is what Mormons are. It's more of a showing you the potential of these situations. And I think there have been plenty, I have heard enough stories where involvement of leaders has gone way overboard, stepped over way too many,
Yeah.
boundaries, where this is just something that could
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. And that reminds me, when you said I've heard so many stories, it reminds me of like years ago. I think this was even a Mormon Expression episode before we started Infants on Thrones, that there were several of us that reviewed the Book of Mormon movie, Volume 1. I don't think they ever made a
Oh.
Volume 2. And there's this scene when Nephi, Laman, and Lemuel, they're still in Jerusalem. I think it was like the taking the brass plates to Laman. And like the story is, they go the first time, he says no. So then they go the second time, but in disguise, and he says no. And just like, when you hear that story, you don't really think about it in the same ways that you do when you see it on screen.
Mhm.
And like watching that on screen made me go, oh my gosh, that's so stupid. How would they have hid themselves? Like Layman wouldn't have known. Oh, this is just Lemuel with a mustache now. Oh, he's got glasses on. Who is this person? It was kind of that sort of thing to me. That, yeah, I've heard stories about like stake presidents that are totally abusing their power, exercising unrighteous dominion, and that sort of thing. But seeing it on the screen, especially the way that this actor played it, like there are parts, like I could see some stake presidents being so like confident and smug. Like he played that smugness really well.
For sure.
But then kind of like the menacing threats at the end, what the way that I interpret it when I see the actor playing that is that he's like, I know that this church isn't true, and you better be careful, because if you're not, if you don't shut up, then other people are going to know that it's not true too. And we're trying to keep the fact that it's not true a secret from everybody else.
Maybe he does think that.
Yeah, maybe. But I think to your question, Ren, that's sort of the thing that I have an issue with, that kind of misrepresentation of just like normal, regular people that get caught up in their beliefs. But for the most part, I think most Mormons want to do right by each other and by others around them. And that's not coming out in this show.
Okay.
this is a little bit tangent, and I should know the answer to this, but I'm thinking about it. And I'm trying to get the answer to it, but I really can't. And the question is, what is it that stake presidents actually do? Like, why are they such a like important role in the church?
They reinforce the belief among the common members that you need the leaders for your own salvation, that the leaders are really important. They just kind of reinforce, look outside of yourself towards an authority.
Yeah, I mean,
That's what I think.
Well, yeah, okay, that's their function as like the
In the
cultural
cultural function. Yeah.
But I mean, like administratively, like what is it exactly? What-
They make sure that the people beneath them are doing the things that they're supposed to do. Maybe.
Yeah, they keep everyone in line. They hear all the gossip and dish things out accordingly.
Go to people at their place of work and tell them to get in line.
I guess so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get what you're saying, Glenn. Like I feel that way too about, I know stake presidents that I love still that are good people, but I think this could happen. Could happen.
Okay. All right. Next comment from Tom.
And then the other one was along the same lines where Jeb's family was trying to go to church, and I think it was the stake president's wife that confronts him outside and has a really awkward interaction, and then essentially issues threats. I don't know. I guess that could happen. It just felt I don't know. It took me a little off. If people have stories like that, that would be I would kind of have to take a seat back and say, well, then that was portrayed really well. But it took me out of it just because I haven't had any interactions like that.
Okay, that's really honest, though, what he's saying, because I have had experiences like that. Yeah. I have had moments where people have the audacity to come up to you and say, I just wanted to let you know that I think you're making a terrible mistake. Yeah. And that kind of thing. So I thought that character, even though the majority, I think, of members would just ignore that kind of, this ordeal, there are those that will approach you and say things like that. Yeah. It's scary.
Yeah, my mom had a situation like that when I was a teenager, and just some woman in the ward kind of took it upon herself to make a list of things that my mom could work on to improve herself, and also to let her know, that there are people in the ward that say things about you, and so I'm going to let you know, and these are things that you could do to improve yourself, and you'll be better, and you're welcome. It just devastated her, my mom.
Mind your own business, Karen. Like, stay in your own lane over there.
Did you? I think that lady who confronted Jeb's wife, or at that when they were coming to church, I think the actress has been in like popular Mormon movies, like Singles Ward and stuff. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I was gonna look it up but she's definitely, I think, one of those character actors or whatever.
That's interesting.
I take issue with the choices that actress made in portraying that character, because it, like, there's some Mormon scenes that I think they do really, really well in playing off the kind of like, we're all happy and we'll just laugh at each other and we'll make, like silly jokes and ha ha ha, like that seems very, very real. And even when we're delivering bad news, we're still going to do it in kind of like this happy way. Like hers was very like so over the top judgmental. And like I get that if somebody comes up to you and says what they said to you, Jess, or what was said to my mom, you would feel like that, but the delivery still might be kind of like, oh, I'm happy. And
Here's what I have to say about that, though, because there have been many instances where people have made comments out loud, or I've shown a friend, like, look what someone just sent me. And they'll read it and be like, it doesn't sound that mean. Like, it doesn't sound, but to me, the language that's being used, or, the way that they're hitting on points that only a member would know, there is a delivery about like this very sweet nature, which they aren't doing in the show as much with these moments. Yeah. But I think a lot of people, it would go over their mind, like, there's nothing wrong. Okay. The thing I hear most when I hear Mormons referenced in any kind of podcast, just in general, is just how kind and nice and, amicable they are. And that's true. That's the presentation of, and it's a really wonderful quality overall too. But there's that potential for the passive aggressive.
Oh, yeah.
and that it can be so cruel, wrapped up in the nicest bow,
Yeah.
And I think sometimes those messages don't land the same without it being emphasized like this in the show. Like the message behind some of the attempts of being like, I'm going to help you, ends up stabbing you. So that's how I feel.
Have you watched Our Flag Means Death on HBO Max?
I've watched the first and a half episodes.
Oh, you gotta.
I know. My kids keep telling me I
good.
need to soldier on. Yeah.
There's a bit where Blackbeard learns about passive aggressiveness.
Edward?
Oui.
Everything all right?
Yes.
I couldn't help but notice that captain got under your skin.
What? No.
Okay.
His words, though. They sounded polite, but they stung.
Yeah. That's called passive aggression. Pirates, they attack with force. The upper crust, they strike with cutting remarks, disguised as politeness.
It's fucking diabolical.
It is.
And
It's
a very funny episode. It's
I haven't
very
gotten
good.
to Taika Waititi as Blackbeard yet. Yeah. Okay. I'll pick up on it again. Okay. All right. Last one from Tom.
The last thing that I had a problem with, and it's a small minor thing.
That's what she said.
Was where the Lafferty wives wrote that letter to the prophet of the church, President Kimball, and Jeb says, yeah, they wrote this letter, and they might as well have been writing to Heavenly Father himself. That felt like a conflation. I think writing a letter to the prophet is a big deal, without question, and we do revere the prophet, but equating the prophet with God himself, I think even most Mormons would be like, nah, that's a bit too far. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Anxious to hear you guys' thoughts.
All right.
Do you know anybody who's ever written the prophet?
Have you ever written the prophet?
My mom wrote the prophet one time.
For real?
Yeah, well, yeah, she'd made these little like crafts of like the Nauvoo temple and the Salt Lake temple when the Nauvoo temple was getting remade. And somebody was like, I'm going to take this to the prophet himself. And she was like, no, you're not. And he was like, no, I am. I know him. I'm going to do it. And she was like, well, if you are, take him this letter.
That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. I get the sense that who was it that wrote the show? Lance Black.
Dustin Lance
Black has quite the axe to grind against the Mormon Church. And every single one of us have filters that are created from our own experience, and whatever that filter is made from, it's a legitimate filter. So I'm not taking anything away from anybody who has any opinion at all about this. It reflects your experience with it. But I do feel like the times where my filter and Dustin's filter don't align are the reasons why I get like annoyed with it. And I'm like, it seems a little heavy-handed, over the top. Like, is this show, it almost at times seems like it's just an excuse to spew venom about like the stuff that Mormons want to keep hidden, but we're not going to let them keep it hidden. So take this, take that. Now how do you like it? Kind of feeling behind it.
Yeah, I think like Jess said it pretty well, like on our first review, and she was like, it feels like what an ex-Mormon would want to say to somebody like right after they have become an ex-Mormon,
And that's the reception that I see in like the groups that I'm in, which I'm not as active in anymore, but I've checked periodically and they're eating it up. Like they love it. And I think it really does speak to that group a lot, or people just in particular that have had a lot of trauma with it, which there are people.
Yeah.
I listened to this leftist podcast called Street Fight Radio, and they were talking about it on there, but they were like really fascinated with the like sovereign citizen aspect of the Laffertys. You know, their whole like tax evasion group. Like that was such a. That's a like where. Do you know, Glenn, or is it in the book? Like what the group is, or like talking about like I don't know, some kind of crazy libertarian group. I don't know.
No, I don't know.
But
do they still exist?
well, I mean, like the what's the guy's name that took over the ranch in like Nevada, and then the people who took over the bird refuge in Eastern Oregon.
Yeah. I don't remember their names, but I know
Bundy?
those groups. Bundy,
Ted
yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Bundy, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think
yeah.
that's the same.
I think it's Al Bundy.
Al and his crazy family.
Crazy family.
It's a
The
great
live
group.
action Simpsons.
Yeah. Yeah, but to Tom's point about the letter, like, was there a real letter? Like, is that a real like historic like? Did
I don't
Brenda
know. I don't
know
remember
that
if that was true or not, or if that was another one of these things that they just kind of made up. Because then you can say that the prophet is just like God to Mormons.
Because that is, I mean, I know like that line is pretty cheesy. Like,
yeah, nobody would say that.
Yeah, nobody would say that. But like the reaction to hearing another, like a person in your ward, if you heard that they had written a letter to the prophet, wouldn't you just be like,
yeah. Like, who do you think you are?
Yeah. Yeah. So that'd be interesting to know if it was, because that would, I mean, you'd have to be in a pretty desperate place to think that like, okay, the only way out of this is if I write straight to the prophet. Like that's a really big Hail Mary, I think.
All right. So you guys said that you had some broader kind of topics beyond, or is there anything more specifically about this episode that you want to talk about, or do you want to move on to the broader stuff?
I think a fun little spin-off on this episode is when that nerdy cop was in the forest, like lost, you know, and he ran into that trapper guy.
Yeah.
What was that?
I don't know.
What I think would be a great payoff to that whole scene would be if we see at like a fast and testimony meeting that nerdy cop being like, and I think I ran into John the Baptist.
No, that would be funny.
That's what I was thinking. When Tanner and I were watching, we were like, he's going to say it's one of the three Nephites or something, like walking along. But yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
The dad is obviously getting even more crazy. Him and his cane, like busting in on that alley scene, which that poor, like unassuming girl that's just there smoking her cigarette, having a good old time. Dan just freaking out.
Yeah.
But it's that family, they've got issues.
Kneeling and praying in public, that would be, man, I know, like, did you know families that would like pray at restaurants?
Oh, for sure.
That was, I couldn't cross that line. Like, I was just like, no, we're not doing that.
No. I specifically, one of the biggest takeaways from this was that car scene with Dan and his wife, and they're speeding up and he's sharing the, what's it called?
The Peacemaker.
The Peacemaker, which I had to look up more about because I had only heard of it. But like, okay, we all know families where the husband was really like kind of a dick. But like this really just highlights to me that feeling that you feel as a woman, even though it's exaggerated in the scene of like, am I good enough? Do I have enough sway or important things to say here when making decisions, or am I going to be put in my place? And, you know, thankfully I never really experienced that, maybe because I'm more outspoken and I'm just like, you will listen to me. But I could feel that in that scene, and it felt true, that feeling of, am I like, is what I have to say important?
Yeah.
So that kind of stuck with me. Which, looking into that letter, or what even was it? Was it like
The
a
Peacemaker?
pamphlet?
Yeah, I had heard about it, but I'd totally forgotten about it. So I went and looked it up too. In fact, I toyed with the idea of like reading it. I might do it. I might read it and attach it to this episode. But my suspicion, and I don't know, like I like Joseph Smith. I'm an ex-Mormon who actually likes Joseph Smith, right? So I give him a little bit more benefit of the doubt on things. I don't think he wrote it.
Oh no, he didn't. It doesn't. It sounds like he published it though.
Well,
like it was
his printing press that published it, but then he got pissed that they had done it without him knowing.
But isn't that because it was kind of like a feeler piece that was put out through Nauvoo, and everyone was receiving it terribly? They're like, what is this? This is polygamy. And then after the reception kind of got going, he was like, oh, this is trash, like, and denied involvement. Like, I think there might be something there.
Yeah. I mean, to me, there's no question that Joseph was practicing polygamy and wanted to keep it quiet. And that anytime somebody would come forward, like John C. Bennett or somebody else would come forward and say something publicly about it, which would kind of force Joseph to lie, force him to lie. He had no problem lying, but put him in a position where he had to deny that he was doing this, but he actually did. So I do think that, but because of that, I don't think that he was motivated to write things and then publish it. I think he wanted to keep it really quiet. And there were other people who wanted to publish it and to do it in his name. And when that happened, he got pissed because he knew this isn't going to fly with people. We're trying to keep this quiet. And
don't you think there was a part of him though that was like, oh, maybe they'll like it, and then he could not do it so secretly? Like, I don't think his intent always was to keep it secret. He wanted it to be a thing.
Who
knows?
Knows?
Actually.
Who knows? Yeah. Who knows? Like, I in trying to understand my own relationship to how I feel about Joseph Smith, I don't even know why I feel about him the way that I do. But I know that when I was a missionary and I would listen to the Truman J. Madsen tapes, I freaking loved those. And so I think a lot of the way that I view Joseph Smith comes from the way that he was presented in that and the different stories about him and stuff. I think that's kind of stuck with me. But there's also times where I don't know, like if I try to put myself in that situation and think, how would I react and respond, which again isn't Joseph Smith, but it's I think why I feel the way that I do about this. I don't think I haven't seen anything that indicates to me that he really wanted this to be publicly known or accepted. And I think the whole temple ceremony in creating these small secret groups where if you reveal what we're doing is going to be met with blood atonement or these punishments were part of the way that he was trying to spread it but keep it quiet. And I also think that it was other people besides him that were even bigger proponents of it than he was. Not that excuses him or anything, but I think that it was a bigger thing that he got swept up in. But anyway.
Well, setting that aside, because he definitely was a complex individual.
Yeah.
I mean, I do know that the Peacemaker comes back into play with Brigham Young, like going into Utah. He used that to kind of further his promotion of polygamy. But so I know. Anyway, what do you have, Wren?
Oh, well, this is kind of related to what you were just talking about, Glenn, because what the kind of broader subject that I wanted to bring up is, and it's interesting listening to you tonight because of the kind of flip you've had on the show, going toward because the very first Infants on Thrones episode you put out talking about it, you talked about how this is a portrayal of mental illness kind of collapsing in a specific ideology. And you're you've made this comment a couple times about it would still be the same whether it was Catholicism or whether it was some other religion or some other ideology, I guess. And what I want to understand is I see your point there, but it's unsettling inside of me, and I'm trying to understand what about it is unsettling to me, because I feel I feel like when you say that, it's a defensive kind of thing of hey now, Mormonism, is it's not any worse than any other religion or ideology. Why is that important to you, or like why
Yeah.
you want to get that point across?
Because I want to really get to the root cause of like what is it that is the problem here. The problem here was Dan and Ron Lafferty thinking that it was okay to take somebody's life, right? They got to a point where they were so insensitive to another person, and they got so much into anger or their own pride. So I really want to get to the root cause of what that thing is, and then you can look at all of the things that contributed to it in this case, because they were born in the time and place that they were surrounded by the culture that they took the items of the symbols that were around them to get to the place that they got to. But if you're trying to place blame and say, well, see, it's Mormonism then, and Mormonism is what creates the problem, I feel like you're missing the point of like there's other people that get to this place. That's not really the root cause. And I think that's it. I feel like it's missing the point, and it starts going down rabbit holes that then, like, if I'm acting in a way that's like Dan and Ron, but it's not Mormon ways, I don't know. I can't articulate it very well right now.
Yeah, so I guess that kind of gets back to the conversation we had last time about like, well, not last time, but I just listened this morning to our discussion about violence and like where violence comes from. And so when you talk about the root cause, getting down to the root cause, if the root cause isn't Mormonism, it wasn't their ideology. You've said, broadly speaking, mental illness, which is okay, like, but there's got to be a root cause to the mental illness, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and so if it sounds like you're saying something inside the Laffertys drove them to this decision, and that's something that was inside them could be inside anybody in any condition.
Could be inside anybody in any condition, I guess it could be, but let's try to identify, like, what was it that was in them? What is the thing that we're talking about?
Yes. I want to say that in this specific case with the Laffertys, the thing that was inside them was Mormon ideology. And
not all Mormon ideology, only a select Mormon ideology.
Yeah, true. That's true. Only like the parts that they chose.
Right. The parts that fit, the parts that validated whatever it was that inside them that needed to be validated by these external stories and symbols.
So what, yeah, that, which brings us back to that. So what was it inside them that needed to be validated? I think
from watching the show, I would say part of it is that they were never loved by their dad. They were really never, they never experienced love. They always had this like deep wound of, I'm not good enough. And they couldn't accept that. I am good enough. I'm not good enough. I am good enough. And then I got to prove it. And so with that wound, they were attracted to those kinds of things that, I don't know. I'm talking out of my ass right now, Wren. I don't really know.
Yeah, I think that's definitely like how the TV show is portraying it. That this lack of love from their family, kind of, I think,
or lack of acceptance from the community around them, feeling like they should have something that the government's taken away from them, and that they're, like, I don't know all of the things. I don't know who they were. I don't really know what formed them.
Right.
But the same types of forces that formed them and that would attract certain parts of Mormonism into them, I think they would have found equivalent parts of other cultures to support and justify whatever what's going on inside of them. And and Mormonism's got it. It's there. But again, it's not fair to call it Mormonism because it's only a slice. It's only a small slice of Mormonism that they're grabbing onto to use as justification.
Why is it not fair?
Yeah.
Because it's not including like love one another. Does it
have to? Okay, but I guess my question then would be, how would you define acceptable Mormonism to portray? It's like there's so many different variations and they're all equally their own take of Mormonism. Like I know that's something Lindsay Hansen Park talks about a lot because she's done a lot of work with FLDS and some of those more on the outskirts. And that's something they run into a lot is like, you are not really Mormon, or your experience is not a real Mormon experience. And of course it is. Of course it's their Mormon experience. And just because it's not the whole expansive experience doesn't make it less Mormon.
Right. But I guess if you're making the statement that says that Mormonism is a breeding ground for dangerous people, Mormonism there is a lot that's in there.
Well, that's like saying politics is a breeding ground for dangerous,
exactly. So follow that. So what does that tell you? Like how helpful is that to say that politics is this, or our education system, or economics, or capitalism?
To me, it's very helpful to highlight those shadowy parts, because then it helps you bring that into awareness when you're moving through it or you interact with it.
I agree. And you said shadowy parts. So what are the shadowy parts of Mormonism that are dangerous for breeding grounds, instead of just saying Mormonism?
Okay. Toxic
the shadowy
masculinity.
Parts. Yes. I agree with you.
Stuff. And it's those kind of subjects that are highlighted more prevalently in this kind of culture, in this kind of religion, where other religions, other groups, systems have different things that are highlighted.
Right. So you've got within the teachings of Mormonism enough to support toxic masculinity, but you also have enough to not be a toxic masculine asshole and still be a good Mormon.
I don't know. I think that's where I don't know if that's true or not.
Really?
Yeah.
So you think that all Mormon men are toxic?
I think that the inherent structure of Mormonism is toxically masculine.
Promotes that.
Is that?
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's,
look at the structure, the power structure of the church. Where is the matriarchal influence? Where's the power in anything that a woman does? It's nothing. So
that hurts to hear. Do you feel like that anything that you did in the church was nothing?
There's a difference between having influence, which everybody has some sort of influence, and meaningful influence, decision-making influence. Yeah, I definitely felt that. I knew in meetings that I had, whether it was, I was in a couple presidencies when we would get together. I knew if I had the experience where I would bring an idea to the table and have it dismissed and then brought up from someone else that was a man. And so there's enough of us that have lived this experience of, okay, I have say, and I know I'm important and I'm doing work that other people don't really want to do, but I'm not getting the kind of credit I never will that a man will get. And that's everywhere. That's not, I don't think that's just a Utah thing. I think that's a cultural thing. And everyone will feel it to varying degrees too, depending on, their personalities or how they feel validated. I don't know.
When you say a cultural thing, do you mean Mormon culture, or do you mean like Western culture in general? Like,
It expands to Western, but I think specifically Mormon culture. I think Mormonism is heavily influenced by, Western ideals.
Yeah, it came out of it, and the whole patriarchal gender inequality thing. Do you think it's getting better?
I think people are becoming more aware.
For sure.
I think there are definitely more spokespeople, people that are less afraid of telling their stories or speaking up. And although I think the church still does a really good job at, downplaying that and, planting seeds of, don't listen to these people. It's still, I can feel a shift, but it's very gradual.
What would help move that shift along? Go ahead, Wren, if you want to.
And this is, I want to, the kind of broader topic and why I wanted to bring this up is because I feel like institutions and ideologies are kind of creatures unto themselves, right? And sometimes when you're in a really big organization, whether it's a religion or like a company even or something, the organization itself has to survive. And so it's almost as if everybody in the organization, from like the president down, is kind of a subject of the organization and are just kind of manifesting the organization's will, right?
Whoa.
And yeah, but in Mormonism, it feels very much like that there are 15 men who can change it at any time they wanted, right? Like that's what you're taught as like growing up, is that these 15 men, they lead this thing and they're inspired directly by God. And if they could change it tomorrow and make it better, right? But they don't, right? And we are all left here scrambling, asking these questions about like, is it getting better? Is our definitions of progressivism or like progress or like a better humanity, why aren't they moving towards that? Why aren't these 15 men changing the direction of this ship, right? And they might be trapped by the institution themselves, right? But I will give them credit because they did try to reverse racism, right? Like you think about that in the the priesthood ban and the reversal of that. Like, yes, it took them 15 years to get there, but they did do it. And these days, in the political environment that we're in these days and the kind of like polarization that's happening, to see an institution, like I don't know if they could do it today, right? Like in fact, I think we've witnessed that it's impossible for them to do that. When the prophet, at the beginning of COVID was like, everybody get vaccinated, wear a mask. What happened? There was like fireworks in Facebook and social media. People,
terrible.
Yeah.
Somebody should have told them that the prophet is almost like God. And
right. So I feel like those 15 men, they can't do it anymore, right? They can't steer this ship. I don't know.
I have no idea what to do with that. Like I love hearing your views, Wren, and learning more about how you see this. But I don't really know what to do with it. One of the first things that you said, I got stuck on when you were saying that these institutions kind of become entity unto themselves. But then but then you said that, but these 15 men could change it if they wanted to, because like my first thought when you're saying that it's like it's an institution or an organization, it's all made up of people. It's humans making their decisions and going on through life, and you get enough of them that are aligned and they say we're going to do it a certain way. And yeah, but you're right, like anytime they say, well, we want to change, you want to do it a different way, you could. So I don't know about that. They take on the life of themselves. And yeah, I don't know what to say to that. I've turned my, I don't give a shit about those 15 men. They have zero power over me or my life. They have zero power over the life of my daughters. They just don't matter unless you're of the mindset that they do.
Which they matter a lot to a
lot of people.
Yeah.
And that's the choice that is being made by the people to say, just like it was a choice of me to walk away and go, you know what, I'm not going to give you guys the power here. Like, where does the power really exist then? Does the power exist in them and this institution that's taken on a life of its own? Or for me that says, you know, no, I'm going to ignore that. You guys want to excommunicate me? Okay. I mean, you don't, but fine, whatever. Like, I'm done playing your games. I don't recognize your authority over me or my life or the life of my kids. And, you know, it just isn't. So you guys want to steer the ship of whatever it is in whatever direction you want to go do it. Go ahead. Fine. I'm going to steer my ship.
I think one issue that I take with what you're saying right now is that with choices, you know, making it sound like you had a choice, they have a choice, you chose to walk away. Is this really like a choice of full consent though? I mean, if you have no idea what other options are out there, this is your world. I don't think it's set up in a way where majority of members really feel like it's a choice.
Yeah.
So,
well, I don't know that. I mean, again, I don't know how to speculate for how most members feel with it, but there are you're free to choose, you know, like I'm thinking about this Kenneth Cope song at EFY when I was a kid that was, you're free to choose. You know, it seemed like it was a free agency and choice was a big thing, even though you really only should choose this thing. But like you chose, Jess, what was the process of you choosing to leave, or do you not see it as a choice? Do you feel like you were kind of compelled to, because your shelf got so heavy that you couldn't hold it up anymore? Because I've heard people describe it in different ways.
Choosing to leave or choosing to join?
Like whether it's a choice or whether it's not a choice.
Well, it's to me, I would classify it as a choice, but I only have whatever options are in front of me. So for me at the time, you know, making choices along the way to widen my perspective, broaden other choices. But I don't know. Speaking to the leadership though, I definitely think it's more of a thing now, because I do too have compassion for even the highest up men, because it does feel to me like a system that's put in place where the 99 matter more than the one in the grand scheme of things. And that to me is probably where I take issue with it at all, is just the fact that they want to promote the idea of, you know, Christ's message of going after the one, but it's obvious that they don't really do that. So I think they're in a pickle, and you're left to kind of keep the masses happy and keep the ball rolling. And, you know, I don't envy that. So I don't know.
Are you happy? This is a really difficult question, I know. Are you happy with the decisions that you made to leave the church, and you're happy with where you are in your life? Not saying that everything's perfect, and you know there aren't, you know, but like how are you doing with these choices that you've made? Yeah.
I mean, overall, I don't know if it's happy though. Like, I don't know if I'd use happy. It's just, it is. This is where I am. This is where all of my little choices and all the directions that I've turned have brought me. It's, there have been moments where I've looked back and thought, oh, that was really comfortable. Like, I miss that. Or especially if I hear stories of friends that are still in, or family members that are suffering, like that hurts. But I also know they're on their own, path of choices and twists and turns they're going to take. But I don't know. I'm not one of those that's ever been like, oh, I'm so much happier now, because I think that's an illusion. It's not. I think it's trying to sell something, just like when you say, I'm so much happier when I join the church. We're human. We're going to have experiences, good and bad, in any environment that we're in. But I don't know. What are you getting at?
I would say the way I would frame it is that I would still make the choice, right?
Yeah.
And we think of choices as like an event where they cannot, once you've made the choice, you're done with it. But it's a choice that you keep making. And I keep making the choice myself that I'm done with it. And I much prefer the other side of it.
Yeah, I guess to answer your question, just what am I going for? I don't totally know, except that for me, when I look around where I am right now and what I'm doing with my life, if I'm able to say, yeah, I like what's going on. I might not like everything about it. There might be some things that I'm still like struggling with, but generally I'm happy with the way that things are going. I'm happy with my life. Then I can look back on things that I've been through, even like the hard things, and go, yeah, I learned something from that, and I'm a better person because of it. And look for the good, right? Look for the good. See it. Make sure that everything that I'm looking at that contributed to the way that my life is right now, if I'm just focusing on the shitty stuff, I'm going to be missing out on the other things. Let's get some more balance with it. I guess that's kind of where I'm coming from, but I don't think about what the church is doing wrong and what the church needs to do better anymore.
Okay, but what about the people? Don't you associate with anybody though that still that is struggling? Like, is there anyone that in your circle, like, and that I'm not saying I don't live in a state of like anger or frustration. It's more of I get reminded, and this show reminds me of a lot of the trauma that happens. And so to me, it's like, I can't just leave. There's a big enough part of me that feels like, because I've been through this, I have an extra space of compassion in my heart for whatever anyone's going through. And to just say, oh, it doesn't bother me anymore. Like, it feels, I don't know.
Yeah. Entitled.
Yeah.
Douchey.
Dismissive a little bit.
Yeah. And I don't want to be dismissive, but I truly believe that every single person has this transformative power. And that the way that you see the world is the way it's going to show up for you.
Yes, and that's very helpful. Like, that's a very helpful tool that you have grown and used.
Right, right. And so I'd like to help others to see, you've got this power too. You've got these tools too. And so,
but first you have to look at them where they are, right?
I do.
Okay.
I do. And like, especially when I'm working in coaching and I'm working with somebody and we talk, like, where are you at? Let's talk about where you're at. Let's talk about what's going on. Where would you like to be? What can we do to get where that is? And when the stories are all about the things in the past that are bad, like, okay, all right, let's talk about that as long as you need to. Okay. Where is it getting you? You're heard now. Here's what the problem is. Now you're creating these neural pathways that just reinforce these stories over and over again. And you get these dopamine hits because you're sharing them with other people who are telling you, oh yeah, me too. That's good. That's great. But it keeps you in this perpetual loop where all you're seeing now is this victim mode, and you're not seeing your power. You're not seeing the power that you have to make those changes and to free yourself from the psychic bondage that the Mormon church had put you in by making you think that you didn't have power.
Yeah.
And like those situations where you sat in and you've got a great idea and people don't hear it, and then some dude comes and claims it and they're like, oh, that's a great idea. Like, what did that do to your sense of yourself? Like, and how do we reverse that? And I think you are reversing it. And I think you have reversed it because you recognize I don't want to be in a place that is treating me like this. So I'm not going to be.
Right.
Yeah. You're right that like everybody has that power, that transformative power within them, and getting like helping people with that it's not something you can like, you can't will that onto somebody just like.
No,
and
you can't.
It's really, it's I don't know what I'm trying. I have not formed any of these thoughts yet. They're just kind of really right on my brain. But I want to say that the environment that they're in has to change. Like they can't will themselves out of
except the environment. There's an outer environment and there's an inner environment. And when you're talking about the power of transformation, you do have some influence over your inner environment, regardless of what's going on outside of you. And about a year ago, it's close to like July last year, but I was coaching someone. This is one of my favorite experiences with coaching because she was the only person in her family that was out of the church. And she had like a big family reunion coming over. They're like 50 people. They were going to be in a cabin with no Wi-Fi, no air conditioning, sweltering heat in the middle of summer for 3 days. And she didn't get triggered once. She came back and she was so happy. And like when she would go to church with her family, she's like, I don't get triggered now. Why? Because she stopped thinking about the things that they're saying that hurt her and started thinking more about like, I wonder what's going on. I wonder why they're saying this. I wonder what's behind the words, what's behind the symbols. And she was just more curious, and she knew that she loved them. And so she really thought more about the love that she has for him, trying to understand and realizing they're not really doing this to hurt you and you're not really being hurt by it. But when you think that you are, you feel that. And so it's this real kind of tricky, like we had this conversation, Wren, and I don't know that I ever gave you a satisfactory answer about it, but like, where's that line between gaslighting somebody and saying you really do have the power of like how you think about things, how you perceive things is going to impact the way that you feel and your lived experience. So you do have responsibility here. Like I still don't know how to say that in a quick, pithy way on a podcast that people are going to go, oh yes, I like that, unless they've already done some work and they know what I'm talking about, But yeah. So I think that's where I'm going, aiming for, Jess.
Yeah, it sounds like one thing I hear you saying is it's more a matter of living in that state, like staying in that. Like you don't have issue with people purging some of the trauma and working through it. And to me, this show feels a lot like that, whether it's, motivated by the director or creator or just this community of people that are traumatized, but bringing it to light, surfacing this, like allowing people to see their experience kind of lived out, maybe just chunks of it resonate or not. It feels like that stage of healing almost where you're like, this is what happened, or this is how I feel. And then hopefully, people will find people like you, Glenn, and other people that can give them tools to build upon, what you do next. But
yeah, this brings us to the second choice, right? So your first choice is, are you gonna stay with this church or not, right? Are you gonna be in there? Are you gonna leave? Because Glenn, I feel like what's kind of kicked us into this conversation is that question you asked Jess about 15 minutes ago of like, do you think it's getting better?
Gender inequality. And what I meant by that was in the world.
Oh, you meant in the world. I thought.
I just meant like the overall, because I don't give a shit about the church. I'm not talking about just like, do you think that conditions in the world, the way that people treat other people in general is getting better. I think we're working through a lot of shit because the nature of social media and the internet is bringing things to light that were hidden. And so as these things are coming into light, we're more like, no, we're not going to put up with this anymore. We're not going to put up with this anymore. And we're going through these growing pains. But I do think as a result, things are getting better. Like people are like more on guard, even if they resent it. Like, oh, I can't say that. It's just a joke. It's not a prep, but I can't say it anymore. Okay, fine, good. Let that die out. And then the younger generations will come in and, things ebb and flow, like cultures ebb and flow. They go up and down.
Yeah, I thought you were referring specifically to the institution of the church.
No, no. There were two things I meant. One was generally, and then also just kind of specifically for you, Jess. Are you feeling like you have people in your life now who respect you, that are men, that you're not in those places anymore where there's this culture that reinforces toxic masculinity? Have you been able to, are things getting better for you in your life that way? So I kind of meant it. I was aiming at both of those things with that question.
Well, it was fruitful nonetheless. But it does kind of take the wind out of the sails of the thought I was going to make here.
Oh, I won't. Let's put more wind in it. Let's do it.
Okay, because I was talking about the second choice you got to make, right? So
Yeah.
Jess was mentioning, like, she was saying that you can get stuck, or you can live in that state of like constantly purging your trauma, or be constantly building these neural pathways that continue to frame you as a victim of this oppressive force. And with the question of, do you think it's getting better? If you really want something like the church to get better, whatever that means, then you do have to stay in it, right? You have to stay in that space because you have to stick with the trouble. You've got to give the feedback to the church that it is creating this problem, right?
We're going back to the root cause question. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so if you do choose, so your second choice then is, do you really take the power unto yourself and no longer let the church have any power over you? Because if you do that, you also forfeit any power you might have had onto the church.
I don't know. I mean, I think we're thinking about power in different ways, because to me, the power can't be forfeited, and it never was the church's. The power, like when I talk about the power of transformation, I'm talking about the biology that you would breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. You're transforming the world around you without even meaning to. You, like these disturbed air molecules that we're creating right now through speech are hitting eardrums and going in, and they're being transformed into meaning, and they're being filtered through your experiences, my experiences, and they're like, I'm creating meaning right now. I'm hearing the same words that you guys are saying, but it means something different to me. I've created that. My biology has created that. My neurology, my mind has created that. And that has nothing to do with the Mormon Church or any other institution. So the question is, do I recognize that I'm creating that? And do I recognize that I can make certain decisions that will shape what's being created, rather than have it be shaped by other people? Because I don't really know that it's a power. I don't really know that I'm doing it. And I just create all these automatic programs that I don't give a second thought to because I'm not aware of it. So I think the second question, if I understand what you were asking, right? Like, so first you say, okay, yeah, I'm going to leave. And then the second question is, am I going to claim my power? Is that kind of what you were asking? Or it sounded like you were saying, I'm going to, if I do leave, then I'm surrendering my power.
Yeah.
Can I just say one thing really quick? Because to me, it sounds more like, with the talk of power, if you are starting to recognize that you have your own power, then it's more a question of, where will my power lead me, instead of a a fork or a, this or that, because I felt that too at a certain point, like what kind of influence will I have? Will it be more useful or important? But letting that drop, it was more a matter of where do I feel compelled to go. And there will be people like, many of these people that are speaking out now that are still members and have audiences where they've followed that power inside of them. I believe anyway, I trust that they do. And that's where their influence is, being used for. But to say that it's one or the other, I think that's limiting. It's more of, you can be in so many different places and have completely different full power moments where you're, reaching people and using that.
Could you give me an example of your power? Like when you talk about recognizing that you have power, like what are some of the powers that you have, Jessica?
I think one of my personal powers is that it's not hard for me to be vulnerable.
You also said, I think, and that right there is a power.
Okay, yeah, I think a lot. Yeah. And I don't know a lot. I mean, I learn a lot, but I don't certainly know. But I think that allows, at least from feedback that I've gotten from friends or family members, it kind of helps foster an environment where you feel like you can say anything. And that's something I felt in the church. That's something I feel out of the church. That's something I feel interacting with anyone wherever they are. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that a power?
I'm curious to see what, like when you're using the word power, what kind of things you're thinking about. So like that was a clarifying question just to understand where you're coming from better.
Well, some people have the power of words where they're just very articulate and they write things that are compelling. And I feel that like through social media, if I'm involved, in those circles there where they can write feelings to where you can just immediately understand what they're trying to convey. And that's powerful. You can tell stories that really sink in and help someone understand something better. That's a power.
Yeah.
I don't know. Traits.
Yeah.
Characteristics.
This is a good talk. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah. We got down and dirty on this one.
Yeah.
Anything more to wrap up episode 4 of Under the Banner of Heaven?
How many episodes are there going to be? Is there like
7?
7? Okay. Well.
Yeah.
What did you think of the?
I think God's going to rest on the 7th one.
Oh, there you go.
A break. Stupid. That was dumb. That was a bad use of my power.
Well, I want to hear what you guys think about the scene with Joseph and Emma, like towards the end.
Oh yeah.
With DNC 132 playing out there on the screen. Like, I mean, obviously we have no idea the conversations in between there, but it was fun to kind of see, especially Emma and her power kind of be like, wait, what?
It's like, he's going to destroy me? God's going to destroy me?
Do you remember who I am? Kind of thing.
I love that line.
He was in like full suit then of like, I'm president. Like, I don't know. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. And I loved her like, I was there, Joseph, when you translated the plays. That was wonderful.
Yeah, it's another example of where the choices that are being made in depicting these things aren't the choices that I would make, but I don't know what, like, that's not realistic. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know if
you would have Joseph Smith putting his arm around Emma and giving her a back rub and like telling her, like, everything's gonna be okay.
I think I would put my arm around Emma and give her a back rub and not step out with the Partridge Sisters. But I don't know I don't know how I would depict Joseph and Emma in that scene, but like watching him close his eyes and channel God.
Yeah.
That was a little
something.
That was a little disturbing.
Or what?
Totally was. But see,
for
do
more
you
than one
see-
reason.
I bet.
The parallels though with this like this historical story and then the Laffertys, I really see them tying in the progression with Joseph and seeing Dan go off the rails. Like you see this power play dynamic between couples, especially in this episode. So
and I guess the going back to that kind of root cause conversation that we had again before, if you're looking at this and you're going channeling, okay, so channeling is the problem. If anybody claims to be channeling, run. Like, oh, really? Is it channeling that's the problem? Or is it the message itself that's a message of exclusion rather than inclusion, that's like stripping somebody else's power away instead of empowering them and encouraging them? Is that the problem? Like, what if the channeled message was coming through and saying, love, be compassionate, and like don't take things too seriously. You're all unique, accept each other, being unique. Is that an evil, wicked channeled message that then you should be suspicious of? So those are the kinds of questions, quite personally, like for me, I'm like, like, what is channeling? What is this whole thing? People should be nervous about it. I don't know. I don't like the way that it casts with such a broad brush these kinds of aspersions on other things rather than on the actual message itself and what it's doing.
Yeah, but you can't have a good drama that's just like the message of.
I know. That's why the things that I want to have happen in dramas never happen, because
you need to create your own. Create your own show.
But it's all based on conflict. Channeling. Yeah, right. Like no drama in a drama isn't a very good drama.
That's right.
Like everybody's just getting along and like happy with each other. Nobody wants to watch that. What a sad state of the world that we're in. Nobody wants that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're using that as an example. They're using channeling to show the authority that's injected into that thing. Yeah. Just like a lot of these other things, prayer can be wonderful and beautiful. Channeling could be wonderful and beautiful. But when you put a stamp of what I say goes, then, but it makes you look, I don't think it necessarily turns you off from any of those other things. It's just look at what it could do in the wrong kind of context.
Yeah.
So,
which could be said of anything. It's like I had this conversation. I don't remember who it was once, but it was around some Sam Harris stuff about. I think it was in response to Letter to a Christian Nation, and the way that Sam Harris would just kind of like deconstruct how poisonous religion is. And I'm like, okay, so by that same logic, no one should ever eat food, because people do die of food poisoning a lot. And there's danger. You never know if you're putting something in your mouth, if somebody's put poison in it or it's rotten or not. So we really should just go to like supplements and vitamins that have been pre-approved by everything and just get rid of this whole thing where we're eating food. And it's that kind of misdiagnosis of like, it's not really religion that's the problem. The problem is when people are trying to strip away other people's rights in the name of, I'm more powerful than you because of God or something like that, But anyway, that's just where I've landed on this stuff. I know a lot of people see things very differently. It's cool.
I like it. I think it balances things.
Oh, thanks, Jess.
Yes.
Appreciate you. Now I want to like reject all your ideas and then claim them as mine, just as a joke, but that's not gonna happen.
I won't let that happen.
Right on. Okay. Any final words, Wren?
No, I gotta go talk to my dog.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Put down the weapons that you use against yourself. You don't need them anymore. Lay down the weapons that you use against the world. We don't need another war. Put down the weapons that you use against yourself.
Hi, this is Hillary.
Matthew, Ryan,
Carol,
Keith,
Ashley, and I like to play bingo online while listening to Infants on Thrones.
You can comment on this episode on the website, infantsonthrones.com.
And if you really like what you hear, give the Quorum a 5-star rating and write a short review on iTunes.
I did. Anyone for the closing prayer?
My worst crime is an inside job. Dark thoughts taking over like an inside mob. I tune into the scene between the eyes and take a breath.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.
I sit still and watch the thoughts float past me. Never mind the future, never mind what the past be. I like to jump and let the universe catch me. Free fall, watch the beauty blow past me. I keep my pockets light, destination in sight. Keep my actions elevated to compassionate heights. I'm walking past the fight